Now, when it comes to Kendrick Lamar, today we are going to be ranking arguably the greatest discography in hip-hop history, because right now, we're going to be ranking every Kendrick Lamar album from worst to best. And with Kendrick, compared to most rappers and artists, Kendrick has carefully curated one of the most purposeful and quality-driven catalogs that we have ever seen in music. Kendrick's studio albums are not easy to rank, as really with all of these mainline albums, and this is very important to note going into this, you can make a case for not just all of them being his best album, but for being some of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. And so understanding that, well, before we go any further, if you have Kendrick Lamar in your top 10 rappers of all time, be sure to leave a like, and if you think he is higher than 10, don't just leave a like, but let me know what you think Kendrick's best studio album is. And without further ado, let's get into ranking every Kendrick Lamar studio album. And now, coming in at number 5, we have Kendrick Lamar's biggest album commercially, as it did move over 600,000 copies first week, and none other than Damn. And with this record, what I will say is that these next 5 albums we are going to be looking at here, they are all classics, and even with this record, it's not just one of the greater rap albums of all time, and it deserves to be in any conversation, in any all-time list that can be made, but just to look at the rest of the big 3 for a second, and let's just compare Kendrick's 5th best album to Drake and J. Cole's best. I think this record is better than their best work, and it's not really close. And the reason why Kendrick's 4th album is just so incredible is because on every single level that it needed to serve on, this is just a masterful body of work, which shows Kendrick working at the highest level as both a storyteller and conceptualist, and also a hitmaker and superstar, with this record coming out in 2017, which was one of the most tense times and chapters in hip-hop, just in terms of the divide and confusion of how things were changing. Well, with this era, and with this point where all the other big-name rappers and all the hit songs coming out were pretty much saying nothing, well, for Kendrick Lamar to come out in an era where there were few lyricists dominating, well, most of the rappers coming out were illiterate, to have an album that had hits as catchy and, well, now 20 times platinum in something like Humble, and it's actually certified as the best-selling rap song of all time if Kendrick would update that. And at the same time as that, all of the other big songs, which in and of themselves were so versatile and showed how expansive of a hitmaker Kendrick Lamar was, with tracks like Element, DNA, Loyalty, and Love, and then between those massive hits, intertwining them into this concept album, which features some of Kendrick's most personal storytelling. And of course, when you get through the record's outro track, Duckworth, you find out that the whole narrative was put in reverse, which adds a whole other layer to the presentation, and even the way that we were welcomed into the album with the cryptic story on track 1. Well, overall, Damn is just a testament to the fact that you can create art that will last forever, and at the same time, you can have massive mainstream success without compromising any of your values whatsoever. And again, just to see Kendrick tell a story in reverse, and in an era, and at the same time, where if we looked at so much of the things coming out, well, there was just a lot of garbage. Well, to see that, and then to see that, if we look at all of the rap albums in the streaming era, well, without the projects that were pushed by games and gimmicks, with people like Drake, well, compared to everything else, this is the highest selling project in first week numbers out of every other album. Well, that just shows you how Kendrick was able to dominate with a vision that was still so authentic. And for this reason, Damn is not just the 5th best Kendrick Lamar album, but it's a classic project, and one of Kendrick Lamar's many entries on that all-time rap album list that, well, you can't ignore this, or any of the projects going forward on. And now coming in at number 4, we got Kendrick Lamar's 2022 album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And with this record, this is one of those albums that, well, when it came out, it left hip-hop fans divided. People turned on Kendrick Lamar for it. And, well, as we saw during the beef, while both Drake and J. Cole tried to call this record a flop, a brick, or tragic, well, if you go as far and you say that,
It shows the type of rap listener that you are. And what I mean by that is that you just enjoy rap for all the wrong things, and you don't appreciate what the genre was created to do and evolved into being one of the most important expressional tools that we've ever had, which now, with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, for both Kendrick Lamar, but also everyone who has ever had the pleasure to listening to it, well, if you want to open your minds and be challenged, and you want to go through what Kendrick didn't just put himself through, but wanted us all to understand and witness, this record is one of the most rewarding projects to listen to over and over again across all of music. And in terms of rap albums, right alongside Jay-Z's 444, it's the most important album we have ever seen, just in terms of witnessing a rapper step up, mature, and face whatever truth they have been hiding from. And before we even talk about the music on this thing, I just have to say that in a media landscape, especially now where everyone is derived on being so fake, disingenuous, and you see it just as much as I do, everybody wants you to think that they are perfect, and if they're not doing that, well, then you have people like Drake who are just embracing being trash and trying to make it look cool.
Well, to just see the landscape we're in and just see the type of role models that people have to get a body of work that is the antithesis to all of that and to all of the lies that we have been trapped within, this is an invaluable musical experience. And for any songs on this album, which you may not like, both from its value narratively, but also with the best parts of it, they really do make every single moment worth it, as you get some of the best and most important songs from Kendrick Lamar, both on this record, because seriously, Mr. Morale is an album that at every corner just goes in one direction, and just when you think you understand where Kendrick is going to go with all of it, it just goes in a completely different other way. And gets all the more powerful for it, because with Kendrick Lamar just breaking down his truth more and more, well, Kendrick Lamar went into this album to show us that he is not perfect and that he is nobody's savior and that he can't even save himself. To just be the first guy to be honest about this in this culture and landscape where everybody is chasing the appearance of perfection, you only respect Kendrick more for a track like United in Grief, which if we look at in terms of the grand scheme of Kendrick's intros, it's definitely the most shocking track just in terms of compared to what we saw from Kendrick when we left him 5 years ago before this. And well, after being the literal biggest superstar in rap who was doing the biggest numbers, winning all of the biggest accomplishments, and seemed like he really was the perfect person in the limelight, compared to what we see here, it's just a completely different person who you would think, despite all the success and superstardom that he saw in that last album and era of his career, he went the exact opposite way here and was letting us know that we are in for an experience that, as he directly told us, we should be afraid to see. And, you know, whether it's a track like Worldwide Stepper here, where Kendrick is speaking to us within a way where you can see and hear and tell so clearly that he is just so in tune with his thoughts, and he's letting us know the worst parts of his truth, no matter what that means. Or it's a track like Father Time, which, through its more upbeat, instrumental, and amazing hook from M.A.A.D, features a really powerful story about why Kendrick and a lot of people have such a hard time expressing their emotions and being vulnerable, which is all derived from having to bottle up our feelings to get through our responsibilities in our day-to-day lives. I mean, overall, to just see a rapper speak up about these very things and ideas in a way that is so poignant, well thought out, and well, you could just feel all of the emotion in it at all times. Well, by exploring his own self and in the process letting the listeners do the same thing, there is no other record that you can find in the entire landscape of 50 years of hip-hop history that can do what Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers did. And I think that is so powerful. And, you know, let by the Drakes and the J. Coles of the world seem to ignore all that and look at this album from the most superficial lens possible. Well, while that did expose more about them than it did anything else, still to only act like Mr. Morale is only a great album because of everything that it represents and not because of its music, you would be lying to yourself. Because from N95, which is still rocking stadiums on Kendrick shows today, as it's just one of the best anthems that he has ever made, to Savior, which was a staple on the Big Steppers tour, and right behind Family Dad's Rocked Arena so well, because it's a perfect Kendrick Lamar track, as it both upbeat and really energetic, but then there's also so much topical depth in what Kendrick Kendrick's saying. Or we look at Count Me Out, which is one of the most beautiful sounding tracks that Kendrick has ever released, period. Overall, Mr. Morale is an album that sounds incredible while doing something invaluable. And I have to just say, because we have went on for this long, but the ending of this album with the tracks Mother Eye and Mirror, that may be the best finale to an album we have ever seen, is from arguably Kendrick's best track, lyrically speaking, in the Mother Eye track, which is just a whole different level of powerful, to Mirror, which is the perfect way to close off this album with the best emotional send-off possible. Overall, by leaving fans with that phrase echoing, I choose me. I'm sorry, Mr. Morale comes together as an album that I am sure, as you can see, is one of the most powerful pieces of art and media of the century at the very least, and in hip-hop ever. And, before we get into number 3, I just want to point this out, and I think what makes Kendrick's catalog so great and important is just the way we have already seen, and we will only continue to see more of that, while most rappers' albums are just extensions of their last work, and they all kind of do the same thing but just sound a little different. Kendrick is in a tier with a few rappers and a few artists whose albums represent and serve completely different purposes, project to project, and just by doing that from a creative standpoint, the weight and power that every record we are looking at here just is more and more significant. And so, with that said, coming in at number 3, and to me as a rapper, is Kendrick Lamar's most significant project to the genre of hip-hop, is none other than GNX. And now, while a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this record, when you look at this record and see everything it stands for, it is the ultimate hip-hop album in this era, especially, but in any era, period. Because Kendrick Lamar told us when making this album, when he was doing that Super Bowl interview with Abro and Nodessa, he was trying to make an album that reminded him of the rap he listened to when he was a kid. And that's exactly what he did, because with just 12 tracks that show off how incredible of an MC that he is, Kendrick gave us an album that will... If Section 80 is like watching rookie Michael Jordan play, GNX is like watching prime Michael Jordan play while leading a 72 repeating Dynasty team go for their 6th championship. And I guess as this is the 6th album, that really is a fitting comparison, because really here more than ever, this is maybe the most unique album in Kendrick's catalog, because comparatively to all of the other records he has put out, well, don't get me wrong, and we're going to talk about it, there is so much detail and messaging within this album that is very important to understand. Compared to the other records, when you hear tracks like Hey Now, TV Off, and Squabble Up, you get to hear Kendrick rapping purely for sport and to show off that he is holding up that ground so high that nobody is going to come close. And as you see more and more with his album, by the end of this record, if you don't think that Kendrick Lamar is the best MC out and it's not even a discussion, I don't know what album you listen to, because that really is what GNX is. It's such a confident album and 100% proof that while Kendrick Lamar and Nicki might have a few better albums, which we will get to later, I don't think there is an album that is a more dominant statement that we have seen from him, or just any rapper pretty much ever. Because with GNX, this album is just the ultimate victory lap of victory laps. And in the process of coming off the biggest rap beef ever and winning it in a fashion like we've never seen, Kendrick channeled that same energy that he used to make the other members of the Big Three look like absolute clowns. And, well, he gave us a record that did every single thing you could ever want in a rap album to do. Because let's just look at it for a second. Because GNX really is made up of every single aspect that you could ever want from a musical body of work in the rap world. Because if you want hardcore rapping cuts with some of the most well thought out and powerful words that you have ever heard recorded, tracks like Whacked Out Murals and Man at the Garden are exactly there to do just that. But then if you want hit rapping records that can compete with the best of them, you got tracks like Squabble Up and TB Off, which compete as top tier hits in any era you put them in and in any room you play them in, which if you saw that Super Bowl halftime show, that definitely was all the proof you would ever need of that. And at the same time, if you want classic rap and R&B crossover and some more melodic stuff, you got Luther, which again is a top tier hit in any era, and you also got something like Dodger Blue. And we are not done yet, because if you want masterful storytelling, you got Gloria and The Heart Part 6, which even comparing those two tracks, they really show up the range and how Kendrick can create stories. And then if you want those West Coast bangers that really resemble who Kendrick Lamar is and where he's from, you got tracks like Hey Now Peekaboo and the self-titled track, which do the job. And really, if you want the pinnacle of all this genius, all these aspects, and so much more, I saved the best for last. You got something like Reincarnated, which to me is in the conversation for Kendrick Lamar's best song, with how much is embodied and conveyed here on one of the highest levels we have ever seen. And while everyone that saw here from the sample to the voices Kendrick used on this track, it was a clear homage to Tupac. One thing I loved about GNX that does not get talked about anywhere near enough is that the record is just a massive love letter to hip-hop and all of music. And if you're a rap fan, the more you appreciate hip-hop and the more you know the history of the record and you listen to these 12 tracks, you'll fall in love with the record more and more because you see that Kendrick is tipping his cap to at least one musical legend in defining talent on pretty much every song. And just to add another layer to that, there is a theme between all of them, which is that whether it's because of industry things or because of their personal lives, a lot of these artists never got the recognition they deserve to varying degrees, which now, from Tupac being the guy on Reincarnated, but also Kendrick clearly using that track as a tribute and nod to DMX, which he made clear on his tour with how integral DMX's presence was to this entire era as well. You can see the comparisons here. Kendrick was clearly going for his look. And also, with Reincarnated, the narrative structure of that track is made with the same structure and idea that DMX used for a track like Damien in Mine, which I really do recommend you listen to if you have not. It's one of the best rap songs ever. And then going beyond that to Man's the Garden, which is a nod to Nas in his track One Mic, which Kendrick's appreciation for him is also seen on Blacked Out Murals, of course. And then to Gloria, which stands as a tribute to both hip-hop as a whole and Common in his track I Used to Love Her. And then going outside of hip-hop with something like Luther, which is an homage to Luther Vandross. Well, that record has only become more and more significant, as with Luther never getting a #1 song as a lead artist and people kind of using that as an asterisk on his career, to this day for some reason, seeing a track that his voice is at the center of, and well, it's named after him, that record going #1 and being the hit at this time is all the more powerful when you appreciate music and understand the backstory and really who was the legendary Luther Vandross. And then, even with Squabble Up, which nods to the often forgotten and beloved freestyle music, and specifically a legend within this scene, and Dabbing Dab, which once again, thought music as it never got to the mainstream. It was always more of an underground thing for clubs and parties. Seeing it top the charts now with a track like Squabble Up, it's so powerful with the best you will understand what Kendrick is doing and trying to bring to light. Well, from all of that, and then even to Chop Off being a tribute to Biggie, to even then the Hard Part 6 putting the spotlight on the TDE guys they came up with in Schoolboy Q, J-Rock, and Absol. Overall, when you see within the musical masterwork and spectacle that is GNX, that while for the people who say this album has no meaning, in the process of what Kendrick is doing in his highlight reel of an album, he's not into so many of the most important rappers and musicians that there has ever been. And for a lot of them, he's giving them a spotlight that they've never gotten. Well, you see that GNX is a record that in this era we are in, it's standing up for everything that has built the history of music and the past, and it's showing why rap and art is so beautiful and needed for the future. And whether you know the origins of what's going on in the music or not, GNX is literal proof that when rap is at its best, it becomes the most culturally relevant thing in the higher circles possible, as that's what rap and its icons do. And for Kendrick Lamar reminding this to all of us in creating a masterwork Victory Lab album that is unrivaled in every sense of the word, GNX is #3 on this list, and it's one of the best rap albums ever, and we have to be ready to put it in this combo at that point. And now getting to the top 2. I'm gonna be honest, these next 2 albums you could say are the best rap albums of all time if you wanted to, and you could say that both of them are in the top 5 if you really wanted to go that far. And so just understanding that, I will say, even picking between these two, it's not easy. But at the #2 spot, we got Kendrick Lamar's second album, Good Kid, Mad City. And with this record, when you look at hip-hop for the last 15 years, in just the 2010s and 2020s decades, and what stars and trends it has given us, what Good Kid, Mad City is to the era and rap we are in now, is what Illmatic was in the 90s and then the 2000s. Because with this record, even to this day, and even after all these years and all these other albums from Kendrick have dropped, the genius that's on display here
is hard to even fathom, just in terms of how Kendrick Lamar created an album that ends up featuring what you could say is the greatest story ever laid out on a project. Because seriously, from start to finish on Good Command City, even the biggest Drake stands admit this album is phenomenal. And it's because when you hear this thing, within seconds you get immersed into a world where, in terms of really putting us into a setting, making us feel every emotion, thought, conflict, and detail of the protagonist that the story is being told from their perspective. There's nothing more immersive as an audio experience than Good Command City, and I think that's a merit that is really going to stand the rest of time. Because with this album, from the littlest of details, like all the voicemails and vocal interludes from Kendrick's parents and grandmother, to the banter with Kendrick and his friends, to even just some of the beat switches which mirror the title of the album in a lot of ways as they show the best of Kendrick, but also the chaos that he has to move through. Well, overall, Good Command City is an album that, despite being an audio experience, tells a better, more visual and detailed story than most films do. And while it's the little things in some of the details that make this record so special and really just bring it together more and more, when you go to the track list and see how pretty much every song at this point has become a stadium anthem, and well, for the ones that didn't, they are just masterpiece records like Same About Me, which in its 12-minute running time is one of the most unreal experiences you will ever have, with the Same About Me track, which is not just the climax of this album, but it highlights a story that is so emotional and challenging that it brings you to places emotionally that you didn't know that you could go. Well, overall, when Get Came Out City, and with that idea of bringing us to places emotionally that you didn't know you can go, that's the genius of the record, and that's the greatness that it will always hold, is with the storytelling, the all-time hits, and everything in between. Kendrick really does transport you into an entire other world, where in this experience where you are learning everything about him. In the process of that, he brings you to places and shows you that through music, you can go places that you could have never imagined. And for this reason, this is not just his second best album, but it's arguably the best rap album ever. And the fact that that isn't even the number one album is absolutely surreal, but coming in at the number one spot. And for Kendrick Lamar's best album, we got none other than Kendrick Lamar's third album, his 2015 project, To Pimp a Butterfly. And now with this record, when I look at this project as a whole and see what it does and represents in Kendrick's catalog, but also in the genre and culture of hip-hop as a whole, this is a record that takes the vision statement of what the pioneers engineered hip-hop to do, and it doesn't just take the very goals further than you could have ever wanted them to go, but it also completes the story of hip-hop in a way, from a narrative perspective, of what the genre was always starting to do, you could say. And I mean that in terms of the realizations and progress that Kendrick Lamar is able to reach here, both in terms of what he sees within himself, but also the world around him and the culture that is lingering within and around hip-hop. And really with that,
that's everything you could ever want, not just in rap, but in the culture of hip-hop. And with how deep and how expansive this exploration is, this album is not just everything you could ever want in rap, but in any piece of media, art, and expression in general. But to just focus on the music for a second, what is undisputed about TPAB when you look at it as a musical body of work is that this thing is a sonic masterpiece. Because with the jazz-infused production, which had all Kendrick's people working at the highest level they could to really root this album within a sound that felt so natural to the story at hand, there are a few records that you could even try to say sound better than TPAB in hip-hop. And beyond it sounding incredible, with the jazzed production that people like Thundercat, Terrace Martin, Robert Glasper, Pharrell, the Isley Brothers, and so many others contributed to, this is an album that from track 1 to 16 manages to capture the best parts of every Kendrick Lamar album and also every rap album ever and so much more. Because, well, from the anthems like Alright, which even just with that record, that's arguably Kendrick's biggest song and his most important, to all the deeper album tracks that just leave your mind blown after the meaning that they reach and end up getting to when you finish them, which starts and is seen on Wesley's Theory, which is arguably the best rap intro ever, and it goes all the way around from For Free, which is arguably the best interlude ever, How Much a Dollar Costs, which is arguably the best storytelling song ever, and Like, that's a song that just breaks your mind when you listen to music and really understand what's going on. Is that as a lesson, and there is a narrative in that genuinely changed the way I think, and I know so many other people who share a similar experience. Or we go to You, which is arguably the most emotional rap song ever, or Mortal Man, which is arguably the best album outro of all time in any genre. Overall, when you look at the story and scope of T-Pab and really just see the message that is being built on with the poem that keeps expanding as the album does, and Kendrick Lamar's personal and the world struggles just get further and further elaborated through, you realize that this album was pieced together in a way even more carefully than Good Kid, M.A.A.D City was, as with almost every track here, when you process Wesley's Theory, or These Walls, or You, or Mama, or honestly, all of the 16 tracks, you're not just wowed, but you are genuinely experiencing life-changing stuff that is going to change forever the way you interact with all media and art, at the very least. And to me, what makes this album so special on that very note, and what I mean when I say that it completes the vision statement of what hip-hop was always meant to be, is that rap is genuinely one of the only forms of media that can help you think better, overcome problems, and just become and turn into your best self. Well, with what Kendrick Lamar goes through on T-Pab, and with all of the discoveries he makes, this album is able to just get across points and ideas that you could really spend years and years understanding in full, and that as listeners, you are going to get so much out of. And let's remember, and it's important, while it completed hip-hop's story in this abstract sense that I'm speaking about, this record was so good and it really did change so many lives that it put a mantle on Kendrick Lamar that, led some of the most important stories he would go on to tell after this, like in Mr. Moral. Because if we look at T-Pab, this album and its success gave Kendrick the whole savior moniker and title that people really tried to put on him, which, while Kendrick had to address that, and he would tell you that it wasn't a good thing, this album literally made people think that high of him, which is genuinely surreal when you think about the effects of that, what it did to Kendrick, and how much promise and how much greatness, was displayed in music, that title became so much bigger than just music. And when you see the title and reputation that Kendrick Lamar got in rap from this project, but you see the way this masterful album concludes, which of course results in Kendrick Lamar having a conversation with Tupac, and with what Tupac says there, it's only getting more and more important ever since it has dropped. And really, with that moment of hearing the face of hip-hop historically speak to Kendrick Lamar after the most important discovery of self and, everything around him as well, we see the culmination of what rap storytelling can do at its highest form. And with this, and for doing so much more, which, again, it would take years to really talk about in all of its glory, Tab is the best album of Kendrick Lamar's. And if you said this is the best album of all time, I would not be mad at you. And so there you have it. There are all Kendrick Lamar's 6 studio albums ranked. And I really had to say, listening to all these records and just preparing for this and understanding and looking at this catalog the way we just did, this really is like a Michael Jordan level run for rap. As really, with 5 of the 6 albums, I think they're undisputed classics. If we were using the Source rating scale, they're 5 Mike albums. And, there's really only a few other people in hip-hop that have catalogs that are this purposeful, this quality-driven. But even going further than that, when it comes to the albums offering such unique things and such important things that are invaluable no matter who you are, that just elevates Kendrick Lamar's position all the more. The fact that this guy can be a superstar, make hit songs, yet there is so much value within everything he is talking about in these albums, as, again, and this has always been the best part about rap, just as fun as it can be, it can also be as life-changing for the best reasons. When you look at what Kendrick Lamar has done in his catalog, and you just see where everything stands, you'd have a hard time to say that this is not one of the best rap discographies of all time, if not the best, and that at any table with any musician, Kendrick Lamar can sit there and proudly say that he has arguably
the best catalog that's ever been put into music. And when you just see the buildup of who Kendrick Lamar was, how he evolved, the different pockets and stories he's focused on telling over the years, and even, when you hear GNX and see the way he raps with so much confidence, but then you actually know how deep he is dug on records like Mr. Moral and Hip Hop to, make those claims about how amazing his pen game is or whatever else he is saying. What I noticed about this catalog, and I think I can say it more than almost anybody else's discography, is that Kendrick Lamar has created the perfect loop of albums that all really do complement each other so well. And again, if you like one, even if you like when Kendrick Lamar is making hit songs more than he is making concept albums or the other way around, you appreciate the other, and they really all work in unison because every single thing that Kendrick Lamar does enhances the other thing. And I think the best way to see that is through GNX, as opposed to a lot of other rappers who talk a lot of the braggadocious stuff and really can't back it up because they're not that good, they're not that successful, and they're just saying things and they can't really carry it, which, to quote a DNX bar, there's a lot of 8 opinions but no power to carry it. That's exactly what it is. When you hear Kendrick Lamar rap and when you see these 6 albums, you know the power that it's carrying, and you know that you are witnessing one of the greatest masters at their craft that we have ever seen in anything in this entire realm of just art, media. You even can throw sports and competition in there as well, of just anything, whether you want to compare Kendrick to artists and rappers and people in other artistic mediums, or if you want to compare him to athletes, because rap is a competitive genre and rap is a sport. And so just with all of that and just really understanding who Kendrick Lamar is, what I have to ask you right now, do you think Kendrick Lamar is the greatest rapper of all time? Now listen, if you made it this point in the video, please be sure to leave your album ranking in the comments below and let me know your thoughts on how this catalog stacks up to everything else that's ever been put out in hip-hop and what it says about Kendrick Lamar as a whole. And if you want to see how just before this, people on Kendrick Lamar's team are teasing new music, and maybe there may be a 7th project to add to this ranking very soon, you're not going to want to miss this one. So check out the suggested video, but